North of the ocean and south of the Himalayas was the land of nature-worshipping Hindus, and it was called Hindustan from the ancient times. The same land was once called India by the Greeks and later discovered by Vasco da Gama, and it was ruled by the British. From that same land, an Islamic state was also created. This land is now being called South Asia to muddle her ancient identity again. This is the map of influence of Sanskrit, and this one of the culture of Dharma, and this one of the Mauryan Empire. Today, no one thinks of the area that India has lost. Bharat is like the body of a yogi. In this vast land of Bharat, yogis and siddhas used to roam freely. Tourism feeds consumerism, but pilgrimages to sacred places is directed towards yogic freedom. In 1947, those who were drawing India's boundaries on the table were not interested in its spiritual aspect. For them, the nation was a physical entity to be divided. So they overlooked Nankana Sahib, the birthplace of Guru Nanak, and put it outside India by a few miles. They were unaware of the importance of Sharda Peeth and Lahore to India. What kind of Hindustan was created which was devoid of the Sindhu, the Ganga Sagar, and Mount Kailash? On the crown of India stands the Kailash. On her feet is also the Kailash. On her lap also blossoms the Kailash. And Kailash is the abode of Adi Yogi and Yoga. The yogic aspect of India has never been taught to Indians in regular schools. Even the valuable teachings of the Puranas were deliberately excluded from education. The word Puranpanthi was made derogatory. In ignorance, Indians were made to give away Mount Kailash, the Sahasrar of India. They lost the spiritual pinnacle of India. The unhindered travel of yogis from here to that point was the connection between Kanyakumari and Adiyogi Shiva. That connection is gone. India is the land of yogis of the world. All should be allowed to travel across the land freely and experience her itihas and culture. For humans, Bharat is the land of karma for liberation. A person practicing self-liberation is called Urdhvareta. Gautam Buddha was one such being. While doing meditation, he sat along the trunk of a tree. There is an upward movement of sap in trees. Therefore, trees are Urdhvareta. The entire Indian tectonic plate can also be called Urdhvareta. At her feet is the ocean, and on the crown is the highest mountain. Such an Urdhvareta land is nowhere on earth. The Indian tectonic plate is the fastest northward moving plate on the planet. Perhaps this phenomenon of nature may have developed in Indians the technique of becoming an Urdhvareta called yoga. The collision of these two plates created an amazing phenomenon on earth. The formation of the fastest and continuously rising mountains, the Himalayas. Perhaps due to this continuously upward movement, the Himalayas became the abode of the yogis. The Himalayas are not ordinary mountains. This biggest mountain range is the axis mundi of the Earth's climate. It is from here that the climate of the Earth is governed and will continue to influence it in the future. The Himalayas have bestowed three gems to the land of India. First, the monsoon. Second, fertility. And third, spirituality. Monsoon clouds descend here. perhaps they come to salute the crown of the earth. On reaching the Himalayas, they pour heavily on India's soil. This is not fog. These are clouds, that is, Megh. Right now, we are in the Alai of Megh, Meghalaya. This place gets the maximum rainfall on the planet. The upward movement of the Indian land nurtures spiritualism, and the downward movement of our rivers nurtures life. This population density has not survived anywhere on earth, but here, this abundance of drinking water is nowhere to be found on earth. The monsoon clouds descend here on the subcontinent. When monsoon clouds hit the high mountain ranges, large chunks of earth dissolve and flow down, forming the most fertile lands on earth, producing 3 crops a year. Only those can practice the higher pursuit of reality who are free from the basic need for food. Gautama Buddha, with thousands of his disciples, used to beg for alms in the villages. Some places were naturally so plentiful that there was no need for the begging. Trees were full of fruit around beautiful ponds. Eat fruit, drink cool water, and pursue the higher reality. Naimish Aranya was one of many such places. Ancient Indians used to believe that the physical form of Bharat was created by Prajapati in the divine age. A land protected on all 4 sides is rare to find. The divine experience of 6 seasons is provided by the nature of India alone. Heaven is here, and so is liberation. Only those with a bountiful nature can believe that the whole world is one family, as they have no need for looting and deceit.
The forest representing Vedic and Indian civilization, and the desert representing the Abrahamic civilization. These two are very appropriate metaphor for the contrast between these two. Not only as metaphor, but even reality is like that. Because, in a forest, you have a lot of diversity. You have so many kinds of species, plants, animals, new things coming, old things evolving. They are all interdependent. So our civilization is like that. So many types of thought, cultures, traditions emerging, not fixed, and interdependent, flux, change. So this is the character of the forest. You go to a forest one day and you take a photograph. If you take a very detailed photograph, you will see a certain kind of quality of plants and whatnot. Next day it rains, you come back and new things have come. You go back a little bit later, some of those things have died. So the change is always there. It's dynamic. It's also open architecture in the sense that it's hospitable to new things. Some animals migrated in, something happened, and this becomes their home also. Desert is not like that. In a desert, things are more static. There is not that much changing. Basically, not much grows there. And if you go day after day after day, you'll see the same sand and few things like that. Nor is there an overabundance of life. So you don't have such a large diversity of things that can live there, whether it is plants, whether it is animals. In fact, the desert people crave for greenery. When they find an oasis, they're very happy. The forest people, the whole thing is like an oasis. So this is why I feel that some of these desert people, they have green flag because that's their fantasy, green, because they don't have it. You see, so in our case, we have green because that's how the civilization starts. Now the desert people, because there's scarcity, there's anger, there's violence, there's I need to grab your stuff, that kind of thing. Whereas in the forest, there's plenty. There's plenty for you, there's plenty for me, because there's overabundance. Forests are rich. Deserts are poor. Desert people are always looking for a forest somewhere. So for them, it's very exciting. Somebody discovered a forest, let's go plunder it. Somebody found a rich place, lot is there, lot is happening there. We don't have it, let's go and plunder it. Whereas the forest people are very content. They have no reason to go wandering and plundering. Forest people not interested in conquering the desert. Desert people very interested in conquering the forest.
On seeing the generous fertility of their land, Indians considered the earth as their mother. The land is not merely a mother, but also a yogi. Abhinav Gupta, the legendary philosopher of Kashmir, once said, "To sprout the seed of Sansara, the world, Adi Yogi Shiva, by becoming Mooladhar, positioned himself in the form of the earth." Veda says that Hiranyagarbha, the golden womb of the sun, is the primordial yogi. How can we learn yoga from the mighty sun? We are safe under the cool cover of Mother Earth. The Bhumi Sukta of Atharva Veda is one of the most popular ideas for the environment. But it was not simply an idea. It was a life based on yajna. The one who knows yajna knows that the earth is my mother and that I am her son.
एक बार यदि कोई उस पृथ्वी सूक्त को पढ़ ले तो मैं समझता हूं कि उसके पास हृदय नाम की कोई वस्तु होगी, तो चाहे वो क्रिश्चियन हो, चाहे वो मोहम्मडन हो, चाहे वह किसी भी पंथ या धर्म का हो, लेकिन अथर्ववेद के पृथ्वी सूक्त को पढ़ करके वो हिंदुत्व की दृष्टि को अच्छी तरह से पहचान सकता है। इतना अद्भुत वो सूक्त है, उसका जो निचोड़ है वो निचोड़ तो सारी दुनिया जानती है। माता भूमि ही पुत्रो अहम पृथिव्याः, ये उस मंत्र का एक अंश है। ये पृथ्वी जो है मेरी माँ है और हम उसके पुत्र हैं। लेकिन कोई ये नहीं बता पाया कि जब ये बात हमारा ऋषि कहता है तो उसके सामने कौन सी पृथ्वी है। क्या वो पृथ्वी वही है जो कि उत्तरम यत् समुद्रस्य हिमाद्रिश्चापि दक्षिणम वर्षम तद भारतम नाम भारती यत्र संतति, क्या उसी पृथ्वी की चर्चा कर रहा है। कुछ मंत्र भारत से मिलते हैं उसके, लेकिन जब तक आप सप्तद्वीपा पृथ्वी को सामने नहीं रखेंगे, आप पृथ्वी सूक्त के साथ न्याय नहीं कर सकते हैं। और ये भावना केवल इंडियन की नहीं है कि पृथ्वी मेरी माँ है, मैं उसका बेटा हूं, बल्कि यह भावना जो है संपूर्ण विश्व के प्रति है, क्योंकि भारत ने जो है अपने को संपूर्ण विश्व का प्रतिनिधि माना है सदा सदा से। यदि ऐसा वो न मानता, अपने को रिप्रेजेंटेटिव न मानता सारी दुनिया का, तो कभी न कहता कि कृण्वन्तो विश्वमार्यम, कि सारी दुनिया को हम अपनी तरह आर्य बनाने का संकल्प लेते हैं। वो कभी न कहता कि सा प्रथमा संस्कृति ही विश्ववारा, ये जो संस्कृति हमने बनाई है ये पहली संस्कृति है, हमसे पहले किसी ने संस्कृति की कल्पना नहीं की। और ये जो संस्कृति हमने बनाई है ये कैसी है, विश्ववारा, विश्वम वारयते रक्षति इति विश्ववारा, जो संपूर्ण विश्व की रक्षा करने में समर्थ है, ऐसी संस्कृति केवल भारत ने बनाई। क्योंकि तुमने जो संस्कृति बनाई उससे तो तुम अपने कुटुंब और कबीले की भी रक्षा नहीं कर पा रहे हो, अपनी महिलाओं की रक्षा नहीं कर पा रहे हो, अपने बच्चों की रक्षा नहीं कर पा रहे हो, दुनिया की रक्षा क्या करोगे? लेकिन हमने जो संस्कृति बनाई है, हमारी संस्कृति में ऐसे गुण हैं कि हम केवल ये 2 समुद्रों से घिरी पृथ्वी का ही नहीं, संपूर्ण विश्व की पृथ्वी का हम उसकी रक्षा कर सकते हैं। फिर हम कहते हैं कि यत्र विश्वम भवत्येक नीडम, हम ऐसी संस्कृति का निर्माण कर रहे हैं जहां संपूर्ण विश्व जो है एक नीड, एक घोंसला बन जाता है। घोंसले की जो परिकल्पना है वो इसीलिए है कि घोंसले में अकेला एक पक्षी नहीं रहता है, घोंसले में जो है नर मादा दोनों रहते हैं, बच्चे भी रहते हैं उसमें। और घोंसले में रहने का सलीका चाहिए, क्योंकि कोई भी यदि उसमें से बदमाशी करने वाला बच्चा है और एक बार भी वो नीचे गिरा तो दोबारा कोई उठा उसको रखने वाला नहीं है, उसकी मृत्यु निश्चित है। इसलिए इस पृथ्वी पर रहने का सलीका चाहिए।
With this realization, a person starts revering Earth like a mother. When we get up, sit or walk, we must take care that our mother is not hurt. Perhaps as a result of this reverence, there were no archaeological footprints of the Vedic forest dwellers. Forest-dwelling sage Kanva, while bidding farewell to his daughter Shakuntala, converses with the trees. The one who never drank water before watering you, never plucked your gentle buds in spite of her great love for floral ornaments. On seeing your new buds, she would be overjoyed. The same Shakuntala is leaving today for her husband's home. May you all bid her farewell. These sanskars of reverence for trees resurfaced after thousands of years to illuminate modern science. Renowned Indian scientist Jagdish Chandra Bose was performing an experiment at the Royal Society of England. Do plants have life? This experiment had 2 objectives. One, he wanted to demolish the perception that India is a land of dreams. Second, he wanted to expand the vision of scientific perception of the West. On the success of his experiment, Tagore wrote a heartfelt letter to him. From the temple of science in the West, far across the Indus, oh my friend, you have brought the garland of victory and decorated it on the humbled head of poor Mother India. Today, the Mother sends you her blessings in the tearful words of this unknown poet. Amidst the great scholars of the West, brother, these words will reach only your ears. Bose replied to Tagore, I am alive with the life force of Mother Earth. My success is indebted to the love of my countrymen, the sacrificial fire of enlightenment that was kept burning for ages by Indians, and millions protecting it with their lives. A small spark of that has reached this country through me. Thus, the ancient knowledge of India reached the West. In 1789, William Jones translated Shakuntalam in English. It had 46 translations in 12 different languages in 100 years. Europe was awestruck. Now art was no longer Aristotle-centric. There was a paradigm shift in the aesthetic understanding of Europe. Shakuntalam was shining among the arts of the world with great admiration. Shakuntala was called the child of nature. But they never thought of saving the child of Shakuntala, which was Bharat. Lustful people cannot tolerate a child in the lap of a beauty. The destruction of India's knowledge was done by the same race at the same time. Sanskrit and Indian knowledge systems have since become a commodity to study. Within 100 years, the consumerist mindset has turned the future of Earth into despair. By losing communication with nature, can we say we have progressed? The time we lost touch with the soil our sensibilities fell apart. Sunlight, wind or rain erase them with time. And during festivals like Holi, Diwali and marriage, these women recreate them with new styles. Continuity and creativity is human nature. Indians lived with nature, revered it, and evolved a culture that complemented all existence. It is time the wisdom of Indian culture is rediscovered. The continuity of this asana can be found throughout historical times. The Nasagra, or the Shambhavi Mudra, in which this yogi is sitting, continues to be depicted in sculptures and literature. These deer under the asana of yogis has been shown like this over the ages.